Well, I am now in the process of hooking up an umbilical. I decided not to go with CAN bus, but to go with the Nitehawk-SB, Nighthawk self burner. This is made by LDO. And it basically replaces this board that comes with the LDO kit, which is based on the, was it Heart K board? And it has the same pinout on the front of it as this fan board. The kit comes with this fan board, but this is because this is an LDO kit, I don't need to replace it because the pinout is the same. So I just pull that part off. Replace the tool head. This right here is my Chaotic Lab tap connection, which is pinned the same. It's marked as probe because it's part of the stock LDO probe, inductive probe that comes with the kit, but you can get the Chaotic Lab tap, and it uses the same wiring connection as this board. Down here, the hot end plugs in, hot end heater, and the thermistor plug in here. So very similar on this one. The hot end heater plugs in here, and I believe this one here next to it is the thermistor. So this one is on the right side as opposed to over in this area, but I didn't have to cut my cables and make them shorter. I didn't have to change any fittings. Those just fit direct swap from this to here. This, because I'm using the Chaotic Lab tap, I wired my own 2-wire connector for the X-axis. And then that I will have to change to a 4-pin connector to plug here. Whereas on this board, it's a 2-pin connector for the X end stop. So that's not a big deal. It's this connector right here where my thumb is, so my wires are a little bit long, so just need to cut this and replace this 2-pin with a 4-pin. This kit for the Nighthawk comes with all the different sized connectors you would need if you weren't using the LDO kit and you had to crimp your own probe connections and ferrule connectors and everything else. But all I'm going to have to use from their kit, I think, is this for the chamber thermistor, because for whatever reason it uses a there it is, a much smaller 2-pin connector for the chamber thermistor than the chamber thermistor that came with my kit. The one with my kit came with this larger size, and it plugs actually no, yeah, it plugs down here below the 4-pin connector, and for whatever reason they chose a smaller diameter, smaller pitch connector, so that the one that is on my LDO chamber thermistor is not going to work. It's too big, so I'll have to chop this off and put a different one on. And I can't print ABS, so I have a friend of mine who's going to print me a new one of these, because there are some files that don't come with the kit. There's one that holds the PCB under the deck, the USB PCB that plugs into the Raspberry Pi, and the cable umbilical from this plugs into it. It needs a 3D printed case, top and bottom, and then the 3D printed DIN rail holder, and then a new one of these is needed. That's basically shorter, narrower in this direction. So I pulled mine off. And then this right here is made for the cable chain that goes along here. And I've asked my friend to print me one of these that supports an umbilical. I don't know if it's going to work or not until I get it, because I guess I could have printed it in PLA just to test it out to see if it would work properly, but I'm pretty sure it's going to work okay. The main issue that I have changing to this setup is this is one end of this cable. This is the other end of the umbilical cable that comes with the kit. This is the Chaotic Labs. They give you the gland that the umbilical goes into, and obviously it's too small, and this hole is too small for either end of this cable wiring to go through. This end of the wiring is like glued in place, so you're not going to be taking that apart. This, however, just looks like a PC type power plug, and I believe that I can get this to come apart using staples. Sorry for the focus on this camera. I got a brand new camera. It seems to focus worse than my old one. So yeah, it looks like I will be taking photos of the wire orientation on this connector and then trying to unplug the wires without damaging anything, so I can either get it through here or through whatever type of umbilical gland ends up going on here, because this is with the connector on, it's just too wide. So that's about the only fiddly thing I have to do other than that chamber thermistor. Like I said, the kit comes with, this is the very small PCB. The umbilical goes into one side, into one connector on this, and then the other one goes to Raspberry Pi, plus it gets 24 volts. It comes with, like I said, the Stealth Burner fan adapter, if you don't have one, but because I have the LDO printer kit, it comes with that same one already, so you don't have to change that out. It comes with, like I said, a whole bunch of connectors. That's the connector that's on the end of the umbilical, which I don't know why they give you that, unless, like I'm doing, maybe if you have to take that off to get it passed through your setup, they figure you're going to cut the wires and then crimp new ones on. I don't know, but it gives you that as an option, as well as a bunch of extra screws. Here are more of these, the larger size connectors. In fact, I'm sure there's a 4-pin right there, so I don't have to go into my spare parts and get a 4-pin connector to change my X and stop from the 2-pin connector I have into the 4-pin. I can just use the one from this kit. So yeah, looks like a pretty good thorough kit. Only quality issue I have seen so far, again, I don't know if it's even going to focus, is this umbilical. Okay, it's got more wires in one end than it does the other. So you've got this really thick power cable and a thick ground and another fairly thick ground. But on the other side, you've got one power, one thick ground, a thin brown wire, and a thinner white wire. So if you look closely, and again, I'm sorry, this is a new phone, you might be able to see, probably not on this end. Oh, maybe you can. There's a little bare wire right there. So I think they have thicker cables on the other end of this cable, and it looks like they cut some of the silicone housing of the wires on this end so they could combine 2 wires into one on this end. So this end has 4 wires and the other end had, what was it, 6? And you can see that at least the outer casing is thinner on all of these wires. It's a thinner gauge. So that's not great. I mean, it is what it is, but if you've got thinner wires on this end, thicker on the other, that's still going to be a little bottleneck. And like I said, I can see like a bare ground wire poking out there that isn't quite in the heat shrink on this. So yeah, it is what it is. It should be fine, but it's just kind of, that could be better, I would think. But, and then the way the wires are just kind of glued into this connector, which is some odd, almost looks like a XT type power connector combined with a regular type connector in one housing. So yeah, apart from that, real thick gauge wire on one end and then they thin down on the other, plus a little ground wire sticking out. Apart from that, it's everything in the kit looks really good. Again, I have 3D printed parts that I need to actually finish the installation. This part of it was nothing. I didn't even take the top of this tool head off. I took obviously the fan part off, and then it's just 2 bolts holding this board, right? Because the fan part plugs into these pins, so you take the fan part off, then you've got 2 bolts that hold this on. So I just removed all the connectors, undid the bolts, put this off, put the new one on, plugged what I could back in. Like I said, the heater block, the heater block thermistor, the probe input required, no changes whatsoever. They just plugged straight in. My X-axis switch added onto my Chaotic Lab tap. I'll just have to go from a 2-pin to a 4-pin. And the chamber thermistor being the one that I will have to chop off and change to a thinner, smaller connector, with the also added point that one of the reasons that there's a different model of this to print, apart from the fact that it's narrower in this direction, is that it's got a little clip on it that holds this cartridge type thermistor in place. So it just sits here. So you're getting a temperature from right about here. Well, actually, I don't know if it's here or here, but it's somewhere on that plastic piece. And so that's where your chamber temperature is being measured. So it's not right next to the hot end. It's in a fairly good place, I guess. I mean, no matter where you put it, you're either going to be, you know, getting hotter temperatures down by the heat bed and cooler ones up higher. So that seemed like a good place to put it, because I wasn't even sure I was going to use one, since I don't know that I'm going to be printing ABS on this, so I don't even know if I care. But because it's going to have the ability to put it on that cover, and it's just a simple 2-pin plug, I definitely will be using it. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be using this at all. The Chaotic Lab system is set up to, well, it doesn't tell you anything about what to do to attach it to the tool head. It just gives you the umbilical gland right here to run your wire through. So it comes out the other end and goes into this cable chain and down. What other people do, and what I guess I'll probably end up doing, is they run the umbilical up to the back panel where there's a cutout for air exhaust, and there's custom pieces that will pass the Bowden tube for your filament as well as the umbilical, so you can clip them together and they both exit out near the top. And I think that's what I'm going to go with, and not use this at all. But I still need a solution to get the umbilical here, although technically I guess I could probably throw zip ties through these threaded inserts and just zip tie it right to that existing thing just to test it out and get it going. But I'd rather get an actual part that's made specifically for an umbilical before I do that. So yeah, hopefully soon I'll be able to actually do a test print.